for the watch party people to catch it.
Yes.
We're alive.
Watch party action. Post, share. Watch party and
I know.
Calisthenics. I'm getting everybody ready.
Yeah.
roll it out.
Yeah, praise him.
Praise him.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for and ask that you bless the food, and Dan for bringing the food, and all the hands that touched to bring the food here for a snack. We ask that you open up our hearts and minds, Lord, as we go through and continue Genesis chapter 41. You've already, verse 36, you've already opened up our minds to this things that are going on that are really interesting. And you're giving us great understanding. So we just ask that you continue to do that, Lord. And we ask that you continue to bless Dan and give him the conduit to continue to put these together. And we thank you in advance for that. We say all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Yeah, since we met last week, and for those that haven't been here, we're in the middle of a famine in Egypt. It's a fun time. But right now, we're in the 7 prosperous years, and Joseph is putting grain and storage away for the famine periods. And that's where we start with verse 36. Okay? And it says, "And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine." Now, the food shall be for store to the land, a deposit in the said cities to be brought forth and used in time of public distress. The Targum of Jonathan states, "It shall be hidden in a cave in the earth." It wasn't a cave, the ground, because if you guys have ever dug in the desert, you can go down 10, 15 feet, and it cools off and it gets damp. The sand will hold moisture. So they can preserve some of their dried fruits and things in boxes and containers there, and then the grain would be up where it would stay dry because you don't want it moist. Okay, so that's going on. And then I put a note in there. It says that what we see is the first grain storage areas, or today we call grain co-ops. You guys have seen those around Buckeye and different places and around the Midwest. Here they pile it on the ground, but back in the Midwest, it's big, huge grain elevators, and they'll auger it up into the storage units and count it. Right?
What are those called?
Grain silos.
Silos,
Yeah.
silos, right.
And if they get too empty, they can explode.
Yeah, because
the grain powder.
the dust.
Maybe I have the wrong word because silo TV is something else
Oh.
too.
Oh,
No, they have grain
There's
silos.
missiles inside silos.
You have corn silos.
But groups of people get siloed into it.
That's right. So a silo is just a large container, so you're containing yourself away from everybody else.
Yeah. What he's doing is he's building up a supply to the inhabitants of the land first, right? And when they should be in need with the famine, knowing not what to do or where to go for food. These people aren't aware of what Joseph and the Pharaoh knows, and Pharaoh's court.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you imagine the population they estimated at that time was probably 2.4 million people in Egypt? You know how much grain you'd have to put away for 7 years per person?
Well, and there's probably at least 2 generations worth of people that have never experienced famine.
Never, right?
Always lived a good life.
And that's the other thing that I need to mention too, because I went and looked up, and I think we cover it in the next chapter. But the last famine recorded in the Bible was with Abraham.
So
It's been over 100 years.
Okay, so it's been a few generations.
Yes. Right? So, and because he went south with Sarah because of the famine in the land of Canaan. Egypt was still prosperous. And so it kind of gives you time periods and other background, I guess is the word I'm saying right there, right? But the land perished not through the famine. It's not the land that's perishing. It's an expression there, because if you don't have people, you don't have a kingdom. You don't have a kingdom. All you got is
Okay.
desolate land, right? It's not being prosperous. It's not producing anything, and people will migrate away, right? So, without such a provision, they would have been in great danger of perishing. Everybody would have died from starvation, right? If I put in there for without people, there's no land to govern by Pharaoh. So, Joseph actually did him a great kindness through God and saving those people, you know, and millions of people, right? I put in here about this author, a writer, Justin A. He's a heathen writer. You can see it in the East Trogo. It's a historical record online. You can pull it up. It's in Cairo. There's a copy of it in Nebraska, in one of the universities of Nebraska there. But it confirms this account of the advice of Joseph, of whom he says that he was exceedingly sagacious of things wonderful, and first found out the meaning of dreams. And nothing of right, divine, or human seemed unknown to him, so that he could foresee the barrenness of land many years beforehand. All Egypt would have perished with the famine if the king, by his advice, had not committed an etiquette that the fruits of the earth for many years should be preserved. Now, this is totally non-religious, just a historian. And when I looked this gentleman up, he was doing research in Cairo and around Egypt. He's a geologist, an archaeologist, a literature writer, and also an artist. He is the author of some of the first, what would become later on National Geographic. He was the original recorder, and then started collecting manuscripts and data and published them. So anyway, he's the early originator of the National Geographic magazine. So he was well respected and revered for his studies. Anyway, so I didn't want to give you somebody who was just a heathen, stuck out there and met anybody, right? So I did some research on him. Anyway, 37 says, and the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. Now, the thing that was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, he approved of the advice that Joseph gave, of the setup and the plan which he proposed. Pharaoh was very quick to recognize someone that was of leadership qualities, and that used his mind instead of his. He wasn't there to impress Pharaoh. Does that make sense? He was honest, and this is what's going to happen. You know, and Pharaoh could have thrown a fit. You know, are you going against my gods or whatever? No, he didn't. You know, he respected him. So, in the eyes of all the servants. Now, this is a kind of an important thing, because, as you know from the history of Egypt, the pharaohs were slaughtered by their own families for power, and the courts were crooked, and it was just very corrupt. That's the word I need. Okay, so this would be Pharaoh's nobles, his ministers of state, his courtiers, all highly commended and applauded it. Now that had to be, I believe that was by divine intervention. God wanted him there, and he wanted him in charge, right? Because, as we know later, he meets his family again. So anyway, it was unanimous, and unanimous consent of all agreed that he should be put into execution of this. The next question, and the thing to be considered, was who was a person fit to be engaged in such affair. And that's when we come up to the next verse here. And it says, and Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? That would be very unusual. It would have probably shocked his court for him to use the reference to God. Not Isis, not Ra, not one of the other pagan gods of Egypt. And and he's talking to them. He's not really talking to Joseph. You know, pharaohs are very. Would have been, one side would have been his people, and Joseph would have been over here with the guard, right, that brought him in, okay? So, they were about him. He was talking with them and exchanging, comments and things. I think when he talks to his court in this period of time, it would be like him running it through his mind, right? And then bouncing it off of him. Is there going to be a problem here? That type of thing. Okay.
Well, Potiphar had high regard for him. And
Yes.
the guard had the head prison guard.
Right. As a
had
ward.
high regard for him.
Yes.
So he's probably heard some of that.
I'm sure he has. Right. And he would have already talked. Probably when he sent for Joseph, he probably was already talking to Potiphar about it. I would imagine. Because he didn't send him. He didn't. They sent an underling to go get Joseph.
Yeah.
Right. They were about him within. He was consulting a proper person to be over this affair of gathering in the fruits of the earth in a time of plenty, and laying them up against a time of famine. We go to 13. And when he says, "Can we find to such one as this is," Pharaoh is saying to his advisors, "We search among all the ranks and degrees of men throughout the kingdom. Let them be of what character they will. We will." He's saying that there's no one, to his knowledge, that has this ability. So right there, I think it kind of, to me, the way I looked at it and I saw it was, because Pharaoh acknowledged God, God could complete his plan with Joseph. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know later on with Moses, he hardened the heart of Pharaoh, right? But this Pharaoh was very open-minded, was satisfied with the answers and the dreams. So, and Pharaoh actually given God credit for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's all God wants, is just to acknowledge him, right?
Right.
Know who he is, right? We shall never find a man like this who appears to have the spirit of God or of the gods, as he in his heathenish way would speak, right? Which he concluded from his vast knowledge of things, especially of things in the future. His people couldn't even do it.
Right.
Like, okay, I'm not a stupid Pharaoh. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. We're going to keep him around,
Yeah, right.
right? And what has Pharaoh got to lose?
And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years.
You can do it. 2 full years. He has spoken.
Was that James Earl Jones?
At the end of 2 full
I
years.
think it is, but it sure sounds like it.
All right.
I don't know what happened.
Now, verse 39. God was telling you in 2 full years.
It came to pass.
It came to pass, right? Anyway, 39 says, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, For as much as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. He acknowledges God, and then that Joseph is a servant. It's pretty cut and dry, isn't it? Wonder why God was going to save Egypt now. Pretty amazing, right? Now, this would have been after he had talked to his servants, right? And his court, and they agreed with him to his being the man they needed, right? At least Pharaoh had declared his mind that Joseph should be the person, right? If any of them disliked, as probably might be in the case of some of those courts, the envy or jealousy, and as desirous of the post themselves, right? Because that would elevate them, right? Yet dare not make any opposition to it. And again, I think that's where God just squelched. He finally got Joseph where he wanted him to be, right? All right. The interpretation of the dreams, what would be hereafter for 14 years to come. That's a long period of time to trust somebody. And if somebody come up and told you that, okay, in 14 years, we're going to have a lot of changes, right? For 7 years, you guys are going to starve. And you would go, yeah, right. You know, I'm resourceful, I can go do this, right? People aren't going to believe him. If Pharaoh announced that there was going to be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine, it would cause some discord among the people. They're going to panic. They're going to buy all the toilet paper up in Egypt.
You won't be able to find any.
Epidemic.
That's
They
right.
won't be able to get any
Supplies.
sanitizers, right? Lysol is
Lysol's
done.
gone.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the Sphinx Lysol, right, by the way. It's called Sphinx.
Right.
But do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But people wouldn't have believed it, right? Not when they're having a time of plenty.
Right.
People are very narrow-sighted. That's why, as good Christians and good followers of Christ, you plan ahead. You plan for hard times because you know they're coming. You know, I mean, you also plan for times of plenty, right? And you don't take that for granted.
You bought coffee.
He bought
Extra
extra
coffee.
coffee, right? Right?
We were ready.
Dave was saving me. Right. I appreciate that.
But a lot of people
Got
can't
my
see
back.
past their nose.
Right, they can't see it. Right.
And they live in the
Saints.
moment.
They live in the moment, right.
They're not visionary at all.
Right.
Right. All right. So the fact that he also that phrase says, "There is none so discreet and wise as thou art." Now, why would he say discreet? That's an unusual term
Because you didn't go boasting about it.
that he knew that
Right.
he could, that God
Right.
give him. No, because he
And
said
he
it was
just had the one-on-one conversation.
right. He didn't make it
He was humble.
He didn't make
Yes.
it public because he didn't
Right.
want the population to buy all the toilet paper.
Right.
and he wanted Pharaoh to have all the information
Right.
first.
To make a decision.
He didn't tell the court, did he?
Nope.
He didn't tell the guards. He didn't tell anybody anything. He spoke directly to Pharaoh, right? So that alone would earn the trust of Pharaoh. Let Pharaoh go and talk to his people and figure this out, and then come back and let me know, right?
He's come a long ways from being that tattletale.
Yes, he has, hadn't he? Have you seen the changes, the maturity levels that he's gained? He's, what, 30 now? 33? 30? About 30 years old.
Well, and he's probably actually learned because that jailkeeper found his father figure.
Would have been
So he probably picked up some personality traits from him.
some
And
skill.
Potiphar.
And Potiphar.
Yeah, Potiphar.
Right. Because that's political,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he would have observed all of this, right? As well as learning the language
Mm-hmm.
and the other languages of the courts. Because we know for a fact that the jails held other countries' people, not just
Right.
Egyptians,
Right.
right? So, and he was the warden taking care of those people, right? So he would learn or pick up the languages to be able to communicate with them.
Right.
Right, and take care of them. And we'll see that in the next chapter.
Were there different languages now?
Oh yes.
So Tower of Babel happened already?
Well,
Because I thought everybody
the
spoke the
Canaanite
same
language, the Canaanites,
Yeah.
was a broken tribal communication.
Okay.
That even we know that Jacob spoke Hebrew, or the original beginnings of Hebrew, right?
Okay.
Egyptians is a dialect.
Language.
It's a Jewish language. The Egyptian dialect was more of a tribal languages are different. They
So
have
it's the same language but
inflection.
different dialect?
Yes.
Maybe? Okay.
Yes, that
So
type
they
of-
learned a different dialect?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Because there's similarities in all the languages right now.
It wouldn't even be just the dialects. It might be the way that they phrase things.
Yes, like with Spanish, which is reverse. If you
Well,
write it out.
technically English is reversed. here.
Right,
Right.
to everybody else, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be that way. Does that make sense? Now, if I said aqua, water, right? Well, in Egyptian, it would be a different word, but it would mean the same thing. It wouldn't say aqua, it'd be qua. It's qua, means water. Okay. No
Okay.
A. It's
Right.
just that's the difference in the dialect. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So there's a slang and a proper.
Yes.
Proper. It's
Yes.
kind of short, yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm not even sure that all the people were involved in Babylon because the Indians were here first, and so were the Asians, and so were a lot of the people on the planet
We're from the
that probably spoke their own language. That they weren't involved in the Tower of Babylon. It would have been the people who were involved in building that tower that would have been
And that was a
separated
certain
and
area.
changed to a different
So
language.
my understanding, everybody spoke the same language until God said, You
Right.
didn't have to.
Right, and that's coming up a little bit later.
And our languages are so similar that he didn't actually just change the language, he just changed the way we said the language.
Shelley, how many different Chinese dialects are there?
Right, because but it's all the same writing.
Exactly.
That's why China unionized and was able to be successful, because no matter what dialect you speak, the writing is the same.
Okay. Maybe that's what he's saying in Babylon.
We'll have to figure that out when we get
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
It'll be a good study, but that's a good question, right?
Start the research now.
Yeah. I think I've got a pretty good.
I'm not even sure where that story is.
That would be in Numbers. Yes.
And you've done numbers.
Yes, I've done Numbers. That's why I remember some of them. Anyway, let's go on. All right, 40. This is important. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. Now,
You just put him as his right-hand man, basically.
actually, he did more than that. He displaced one of his own family members. This probably didn't go over well. You can imagine, because they would have placed their own family, nephews, brothers, sisters, like the sister of Pharaoh that had Moses, right? Lived in the palace, in
Right.
Pharaoh's, it was part of Pharaoh's court, right? Not only in his family, but in his whole kingdom. His family had been restricted according to what they could do, right? Because he was still then Pharaoh over the land. Pharaoh's giving up his position of the trade for Egypt. All of the trade. I'm not talking about just the grain. It falls under. Not that he has to do it, but it will fall under his authority.
I still think he spoke to Potiphar.
Well,
Because
they
they
need to
just
prove it. Yeah.
completely gave him full reign, and then
And
look
made
what
money.
happened, right?
And he prospered, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and he was very successful. Potiphar actually did him a great favor.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so whatever he ordered and commanded them to do, they should do. All right. All my people shall, and the word they use is kiss in the Egyptian. That is either their hand or the sight of him or meeting him. They're going to give him the same respect they would have gave Pharaoh. The Pharaoh, right? This is to be done in token of respect, and veneration shall yield a ready and cheerful obedience to him. Right? He's by this time when Pharaoh said this, people would have been assigned by Potiphar to guard Joseph now. Joseph would have been over Potiphar. He's no longer the master. Change of venue is happening. Okay. Now, only in the throne. Oh, the kiss was a sign, and we'll see that in Psalms 2:12. It shall be fed, supplied with corn, and with all necessary provisions. The kiss was a sign, right, of prosperity or wellness, type thing, right? They believed that the Pharaoh controlled all the weather, the crops, the Nile, since he was king, right? All right. When he says, only the throne that would be greater than thou, that is, he alone would be king and wear the crown and sit upon the throne and have all the ensigns of royal majesty in which Joseph was to have no share of. Okay? So what we have a, let me put it this way, we have a figurative king, and then we have a working king, is what we have. Does that make more sense?
Figurative would be
A
Pharaoh.
figurative, and then a, right.
Joseph working.
He's the working king.
He's the hand of the king.
He's the hand of the king. Much like Christ.
Mhm.
He was God's hands extended to the earth, right?
So real quick.
Yes.
So the Tower of Babel, we did go through that already.
Oh, we did, right? It was in earlier.
Genesis chapter 11.
Oh, that's way back.
So everybody would have spoken different languages.
But even here
I'm a
it
bad
says,
student because I didn't remember that.
I
according to
didn't
the
either.
story,
No, it was in Numbers.
a united human race in the generations following the Great Flood, speaking a single language and migrating westward, comes to the land of Shinar. So it was a united human race. So it's still up for debate on whether or not it was everybody or just this united human race that went to Shinar.
Right, but that's when God said,
because they thought they were greater than him, and he had to put a dampener on it.
So King James
Big action.
says, and the whole earth was of one language and one speech, and it came to pass that they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said to one another, let us make a brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime for mortar. And they said, let us build a city and a tower, blah, 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 reach up into heaven, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. So in other words, no matter what they imagine, they're going to be able to do it. They're going to go to the moon too soon. Let us go down there and confound their language, and so they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from hence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build a city. Therefore this is the name called Babel, because the Lord did there confound of all the earth, and therein did the Lord scatter them abroad the face of the earth.
Yeah, so the first statement was the whole earth, and then he scattered them across all the earth,
Yes.
which would be two different things.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't know how to interpret it.
Right. Pretty amazing, huh?
Either way,
Yes.
chapter 41, all them people in jail spoke different language.
Yes. Right.
Sorry, that's
But
just how my
even,
brain
but
works.
even the Egyptians spoke dialects.
Yeah, they were just like the Chinese, like we
Just
just
like the
talked
Chinese
about.
Yeah, the different area.
Like
Yeah.
Mandarin,
Well,
Cantonese.
Well, we know that the ones from what they call it, the cattle king, or the cattle princes of Egypt, which on the east side of the Nile River, where Joseph settled with his family, the herd king. They called them the herd kings, herdsman kings, right? That was their language was different than the others.
Perfect example. If you go to Maine,
Yes,
you will not know what half of those people are saying.
Right.
it's true.
I can't understand anybody who speaks Cajun.
Yeah, right. You go to Louisiana,
Yeah.
a lot of it's the
Half
same
the
way.
time I can't even understand my son-in-law.
Yeah, he's British,
Yeah.
and he's speaking proper English.
The Queen's English.
The Queen's English.
Oh, Lord.
He just leaves out a bunch of letters.
He does. He just leaves letters.
And then in Maine, they drag 3 or 4
Yeah.
words together and make a sentence into one word. And
Oh.
they say things like fetched up and
Yep.
bumped up, and
Yeah.
they never throw
They
anything.
wing
They
it,
chuck
wing
it,
it,
or they wing
chuck-
it.
Yep.
All right, so we understand why he
Yes.
was so
Schooled, well-rounded.
well-rounded. Yeah, he
Cultured.
Culture. That's the word I'm looking for. Culture.
Right.
He's cultured. All right. All right. So we go on to where am I at?
41.
I think it's 41.
Yes,
Should be, right?
yes.
Yeah, because you said 40 was there.
Right. Right. The last part of that other verse was says, even to bind his princes at pleasure, to teach, instruct, and direct his senators. We find that in Psalms later on. Daniel, in the book of or David, writes about it. Okay. So Pharaoh, verse 41 says, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And I hate to do this, but do you know the symbols for some of the gods in Egypt at the time, the false gods? Well, Ra was the sun,
Right.
and Isis was
eyeball. One of them was an
the
eyeball.
eye, right? That was
Cats.
Isis. There was cats. There was moons.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember Joseph's one of his dreams?
The ladder.
The stars,
Oh yeah, the stars. That's
right?
right.
And they were all paying homage to one
Paying-
star,
yes.
and,
Oh, yeah.
and the
Yeah,
sun and
yeah.
the moon also paid homage.
Yes.
Yeah.
The land of Egypt is represented by the sun and the moon. It all
And they
plays
thought it was about it was though, because it said the 12.
right, but it also, and some of the interpreters thought, they thought about his mother and his father.
So it's Egypt bound to him, and he was the star.
Yep, he controlled all of it. All right. Anyway, so that's
Hmm.
just one of the other clues that came up in some of the research. Right? And I'm like, okay, there's a correlation here, right? All right. So Pharaoh, he continued speaking to him for the greater confirmation and understanding of what he had said. That's what he said unto Joseph, right? He's left the court. They're all doing their thing, right? He's walked back over here and goes, okay, Joseph, you're in charge. What do you think?
I think Joseph lost all the color in his face.
Right.
Probably.
Not,
Jaw hit the floor.
Yeah.
but see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt, not merely as the corn master in general, right, to take care of provision of corn in time of plenty against the time of scarcity, but as a viceroy or deputy governor over the whole land. He promoted him beyond what Joseph had expected. Or not, I don't think Joseph even expected it. I
No,
think
he it was
just
wanted to get out of prison.
He just wanted to be, I just want to be outside.
Right.
All right. Now,
Piece of air.
verse 42 says, and Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand and arrayed him in the vestures of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. Now, the Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, which, as it was, expressive of the interest he had in his royal favor, right? It is also a token or symbol of that high office and great dignity to which he was promoted. He gave him his ring as a mark of honor, as being in place next unto his viceroy or his deputy. In other words, his right-hand man, like you
Right.
said earlier. Okay? It is observed by many that this might be his signet or the ring which he had his seal upon it, by which he sealed patents and public deeds, and which he gave to Joseph to make use of it in his name.
Because
That would make
sense. Trading and all
Yeah,
that kind of
He's
stuff.
so
going to be
he
doing
was-
all the commerce.
Right, so he put his ring.
Pharaoh's going on vacation. Right? Think about it. I'm going to use the man of God to take care of my kingdom. Well, kind of makes sense, right? Think about it for a second. You just
He's
smile.
tired. He had a lot of wives.
Yeah, he was tired. He had a lot of wives, right? Okay, right. So, and he arrayed him in vestures of fine linen. Now, what did Joseph wear coming in? You guys remember what they gave him?
Was it tatters?
Well, he was in
No.
tatters.
He
Oh,
was
no,
dressed-
he was
He
dressed
was-
nicely,
He was
yeah.
dressed as a servant.
Right.
He would have had a basic linen,
Like a toga type
Yeah.
thing or something.
yeah, linen, white linen, right, to Pharaoh, to be brought before Pharaoh, and within Pharaoh's court for all to see. If you do a public thing like that, the Queen of England knights people, doesn't she? Do you remember that? They make it, it's a big thing there, right?
Mhm.
It's in the papers. There's publicity, and all she's doing is laying a sword
Right.
on them, right? It's symbolic, right? Yeah, you've pledged your oath to me, and I can take your head if I want.
Mhm.
That's what it means,
Right.
Yeah.
right? But you found honor amongst amongst me, my people, right?
Right.
So this is very symbolic of the same thing, okay? The gold chain about his neck, another badge of honor and dignity, and is also seen in Daniel 5:16. Do you remember when Daniel was made part of the court?
Mhm.
Under
Yeah.
yeah, he was given a gold chain to wear
Right.
around to signify where his position in the court was.
Mm-hmm.
So that has to even transpired down, okay? All right, let's go on now. 43 says, and he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, bow the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. Now, he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, by which it also appears to the people of Egypt that he was next to Pharaoh, but not above him. So it would have been
Right.
positional, right? But he would have been riding in one of Pharaoh's chariots,
Right.
right? And he would have had, and at that time they would have their guards or centurions or whatever you want to call them, running before them, crying out to the people, bow, Pharaoh's coming, and the new name he gave him. We'll get to that in a minute, right? All kings were known to have more chariots than one, right? They were distinguished by first, second, and et cetera, being of greater state than the one than the other. And that's you'll find that in 2 Chronicles 35:24. All right, position of the chariots and the condition and the style of the chariots dictated who was in charge.
Like
Okay.
when Moses and his brother used to fight for the jockey for the first spot
Yes,
in the chariot races
Right.
that they had.
Right.
right. Okay. And they cried before him, bow the knee. When Joseph would go out, his guard would go out. his guard that attend him would, when he rode out in the chariot, called to the people as they passed along to bow the knee to Joseph. Why would Joseph have to do this? Why would it be important? Well, once the people need to know, visually know who he is when they see him. Pharaoh wants to make that. That's why he's in the chariot riding around Egypt right now. Okay. Second of all, the people that are business people and what do you call it? Commercial people that sell and buy from Pharaoh now know that there's a new guy in charge.
The
And
tradesmen.
the tradesmen, yes, would have to know and his necklace and the ring would signify to them. They would pick up on that really quick. He's in charge, right?
He's the
So
man I need to talk
he's
to.
letting all the land know what he's done. Right? You couldn't do it by messenger,
Right.
so they did it by right. They
No
didn't,
social media?
didn't
They did it by parade.
They did it by chariot.
by chariot
And runners.
right? Runners, right? Okay. I think that's pretty.
That
cool,
must have
though.
took days to do that,
It covers quite a bit of time.
just for them to go around and be presented.
Well, and chariot with the horses and the runners, and they would stop at probably every city, major city. At the time, there was 8 major cities in Egypt. You know, that was distances
Right.
apart. Yeah, it'd probably take 2 or 3 months.
And then from the cities, they would,
Yes.
messengers
Yeah,
would
that
go
might
out.
take a longer
Right.
than that. You figure he's gotta meet with all the heads of whatever in each city, doesn't he?
Yep.
All
Yeah,
it
that's
did-
gonna be the one.
The
All we have to
runners
do is
told
see
them,
him.
Yeah.
this guy's
Oh,
coming, take a knee.
Okay, I
Right.
figured you would have said something, hey, this is what I wanna do.
Not yet.
Oh,
He
okay.
hasn't got permission or the money yet to do this.
He's got
It's
the
coming up.
gold chain, he's got the bling, and the runners say,
He's
when
got-
this guy's rolling in, take a
Got
knee.
the authorization.
Take a knee, right.
He's got all that though.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything yet, right? They proclaim him Abrek, which the Okonos is paraphrases. This is the father of the king. Jericho observed that Reek, R-E-C-H, rich, signifies a king in the Syriac language. Disagrees with what Joseph himself says that God made him a father to Pharaoh. That's
An
not-
advisor,
Yes,
a confidant.
a confidant, right?
Yes.
Like a father,
Right,
Like you give fatherly advice.
right?
right. An
Because
advisor.
how old was the Pharaoh at the time? Do you guys remember the ages of the pharaohs?
They
They were
were
young.
young.
They were
Well,
young.
yeah, he's,
He's a child.
wouldn't he be a lot younger than Joseph?
He'd be younger than Joseph, yes.
Yeah.
And they figure he was the Pharaoh of Goshen at the time period, in the third dynasty. He was only 19 when he took the throne.
It's because they kept
That's
killing
right.
each
They kept killing each other off.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
don't trust my family. I
and
got
what-
this
Yeah.
right here, and I know I'm going to be safe
Right.
because he's got God with him.
That's right.
The kid wasn't stupid, was he?
Right.
Right? Anyway, we'll see it again in Genesis 45, and I'll bring it back up again. Anyway, so he acted more like a father who had great wisdom to this young Pharaoh in his younger years. Okay, he acted the part of a tender father to the country. Wouldn't he be like a father to the country? He's just serving
Yeah.
all of the people.
Right.
The great father, right? Kind of symbolic. All right. He made him ruler over the land of Egypt, appointed him the governor of the whole land, and invested him with that office. Made him appear to be so by the grandeur and the position he raised him to. Right? That, when you can say it in court, but if you don't put it out there,
Right.
it doesn't mean a thing, right? All right. So 44 says, "And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." Right? Without thee, right? He says, "I'm king," which the word Pharaoh signifies, right? It's not a proper name, but a title of office. All right. The sense is that Pharaoh had raised Joseph to such high honor and dignity, yet he alone was king, or this he said to show his power and authority to do what he had done. Both. He wanted Joseph to understand, I have the final word. But no one else is above you
Right.
but me. So what has he done? He's ensured that no matter who comes against him or claims in court, no, only Pharaoh can remove him from that office.
Right.
He locked him in, secured him in that position, and then had to put guards around him. Right? He did. Right? All right. But also, what does it tell Joseph? It tells him what we stand here. It says that he would stand by him and support him in this office and purpose.
Right.
I got your back.
I got
Yeah.
your back. You take care of mine. I take care of yours. Wow, what an amazing thing for somebody. What, 3 hours earlier was in a prison,
Right.
right? A little culture shock.
A few years before that was in a hole that his brothers put his own flesh and blood through.
Put 'em in.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. When he says that these shall not a man lift up his hand or foot in all of Egypt, which is not a strict literal sense, but proverbial, saying that nothing should be done in the nation or any moment or importance as relating to the political affairs and the cultural affairs that wasn't done without his approval. So all of it was going to be channeled right through him. Right? Joseph has a big load coming at him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, let's go to the next one. But with his order and authority, his hands and feet being the principal instruments of action. Without Joseph, there was no action. There's nothing getting done. Okay? Pharaoh called Joseph's name, and I cannot say this one, Zappathania, something like that.
That's
Sure.
good.
Yep, you want to see it?
We'll call him Zap.
Yeah, right.
What you said sounds good.
Phanea.
I don't even know where it is.
Zap-
Oh, it's right here.
Zappathania.
Zapanath.
Japanese.
Pandia.
Okay. Now we're all talking different languages. Babel hasn't worked yet. All right.
We'll call him Zap for
Yeah,
short.
right.
And he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, not for Potiphar, but Potiphar, priest of On. And Joseph went out all over the land of Egypt. That's the trip he's going. Okay. Now, this common type of an Egyptian name given to Joseph by Pharaoh coming from a root meaning God hath said he liveth. That's what his name meant. Okay. Well, the interpretation to the Egyptians would be that Pharaoh say that he liveth, he's in charge. Do you see how that would be? Because of the title he gave him, right? The name. But we also see it in Genesis a little bit later here, which according to the paraphrase and the sound of it, Oknos signifies to whom the hidden things are revealed. It also means that, right? As Johnson interprets it as revealer of secrets. So within the different languages of Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
each one would have a little different meaning.
And they're all the same as what he is.
Yes, they all represent him, don't they? I still think that this Pharaoh was really wise and a highly intelligent young man at the time. Okay. Now, when he gave him to wife as Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, note it is not the same spelling with Potiphar, Joseph's master, as earlier, right? Jerick says not that only their names differ, but also their offices. Now, and we know that this one was what? It was the priest of On, right? It is likely that Pharaoh would marry his prime minister into the family of one of his princes, then of his priest. One of his family members is head of the religious sect
Mm-hmm.
of the country. And now Potiphar's ensured that Joseph's not going anywhere. Yeah, I'm going to marry one of my kids.
Tied
Right.
him into the
Tied him
family.
into the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it also ensures what? Protection.
Right.
Maybe they're killing
Well,
each other.
I know, but you don't go against the religious sect of Egypt,
Okay.
right? There was some,
Yeah, they're trying to give him a little more protection. Is
Right.
What he's doing.
right?
And I could see his logic because Joseph's God,
Mm-hmm.
right, reveals these things. So why wouldn't you want to marry him to someone who knows
About
my gods,
Right.
Right.
so to speak, if I'm Pharaoh?
if you're
Right.
Pharaoh, the
You know,
pagan
you
gods.
make a godly union
Mm-hmm.
of
That's
these
exactly-
gods and his one God.
That's
Yep.
exactly what I was thinking.
And who's going to be Lord over all of that?
Pharaoh.
No, the Lord over the land, which includes the religious side. He's
Right.
above everyone.
Yep.
He's ensuring that his beliefs aren't taken away, but put God above all of them
Right.
by doing that.
Because of what God has done for him.
Yes,
With the
exactly.
blessings.
Yes. And
Joseph's
people,
God.
sometimes people, yeah, Joseph's God has placed him above all the
Pharaoh
pagan gods.
Yep.
Right.
Egyptian.
Wow. And this Pharaoh made that happen. So at one time, God was in charge of Egypt. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And then they fell by the wayside. But anyway,
They backslid a little
they
bit.
backslid a little bit, right? No, for people, right? But a lot of times you don't pick it up when you're reading that if you don't look at the positions in
Right.
the hierarchies.
You just go, oh, he gave it to a priest's daughter.
Yeah.
You
Right.
don't really think unless you're
Oh,
sitting
she
around
must
the table having a conversation about it.
Right, right. You don't pick up on it. So it gives it even more importance, I think. Right? When I first read that over, and I'm reading this, and I'm looking at the what do they call it, the genealogy of the people, and I went, oh, the priest of On. Oh, he's related. Ah.
Yeah, you're right, because usually you marry people off for like land. Well, here's your reward for doing all this. Marry this person's daughter because then you'll inherit all of this
all of England
land
was
in
set
the
up that
south
way,
or the
right?
land in the east. Or
Mhm.
but
Right.
now what he's doing is their kids are going to inherit the religion of Egypt.
Yep. And those kids are going to be protected.
Hmm. That's cool.
That's pretty cool, isn't it? Because no one was going to go against and harm one of his kids, I guarantee it.
No,
Right.
because like I was going to say, the Egyptian religion and gods there's so much into them just to bury somebody.
Oh.
When you die, the rituals.
Oh, that they have to go
and
through?
so that they can go travel
the
the
afterlife.
river to the afterlife
Right.
and have their treasures there.
And Ra
there's
will bring you back.
Right, there's all that. So,
Yeah. So this was a big deal.
oh yeah.
It was a big deal, okay? All right. And I put a note, this seems to be more agreeable to the high rank that Joseph was raised to as well, and more suitable to his character as a worshiper of the true God, right? He's not saying that Joseph has to worship the priest of On,
Mm-hmm.
because you're now above him.
Right.
I'm like, you worship your God. He's in charge. He would not choose to marry the daughter of an idolatrous priest either, though, right? Not by his own choice. But
Unless he could convert her and have the
Ah.
authority to convert her.
Yes, he
Or
did.
The means without being smashed down.
Right. Can he influence the rest of the nation?
Absolutely.
Sure.
And his beliefs and his actions?
Or at least
Right.
his kids can.
Yep. They've become very powerful. Right. The priest of On, the same with Evan, that's another name for the On. Much is meant that Pharaoh made this match. That's what I was trying to get across to you. It's a great honor and affection to Joseph. It was out of respect and concern for Joseph too, right? Joseph could not well refuse that position or that person. And Joseph was smart enough, he'd been around long enough to know, right? All right, the priest of On. I said if you ever want to read it, I put in there, see John Gill on Ezekiel 30:17 on the Avon people. It's a historical records of Ptolemy is called Ani, about 22 miles from Memphis. Is said to be the metropolis of the Heliopolitan home. He has been since called Hippolysis. It is in the Septuagint, a version which signifies the city of the sun, and the same with Beth-Shemesh, the house of the sun in Jeremiah. All these places that's talking about where this priest lived is where Joseph moved out to with his family when his brothers came.
Another very good reason to marry him off
Mm-hmm.
is because of what happened to him in Potiphar's house. Now he's a married man, so no woman should come and accuse him,
Nope.
and Pharaoh
No
won't
beef.
lose him on those grounds.
Right. Also protect him on that side of the house, right? All right, so what's going on now? It says, and Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. He himself went forth. This is in his grandeur before related, and took a tour throughout the whole land to observe the fruitfulness of it. To make now that's why he needed to go out too.
Yeah.
What can we preserve and what can we not preserve? Right?
You do a survey of the land.
And
He's
what's,
surveying
and what's easier
what's
to
growing here.
actually make use
Yes,
of
right.
that we could use
Right.
later on.
And also, if he's going to all these towns, where's the best place to put your
Your
silos,
granaries,
your granaries and
yeah.
things, right? Your
And what
storage
do you-
facilities. He's gaining the information, but also being introduced.
Well, they're telling him what's easiest to preserve and keep
Yes, he would. Yeah.
also, so
Yeah.
that you can have enough for the.
Hmm. So as he went through there, he's going to. Where's that? Okay. Yeah, to make choices to places lay up the intended storage, right? So Joseph 46 says, and Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and Joseph went out from the presence of the Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt, right? There we have the date, his age. He's only 30 years old, but he would be older than the Pharaoh. Pharaoh's
Right.
19, 20
And
years
30
old.
is the prime.
Yes.
According to the Bible.
Right? The prime age of maturity.
Mm-hmm.
And you're beginning to use both lobes instead of one, right? So, in interpreting these dreams, he had such honor conferred upon him as to be made his prime minister. Basically, is what he is, right? Joseph had been in Egypt 13 years by this time, and partly in Potiphar's house and partly in the prison since he was 17 years of age when he was sold, as seen in Genesis 37:2. It's quite a long time, right? And he went out from the presence of Pharaoh, from standing before him and ministering to him as his counsel and chief statesman. All this would have had to have been arranged before he went on this tour, right? Because Joseph owned nothing.
Right.
He wouldn't even have had a place to live. He would have to gone back to the prison.
Mhm.
And I'm sure Pharaoh was like,
Right.
that ain't happening. Right? You're going to stay here. Right? Also, so he could confer with him more, I'm sure.
Right.
Right? Right. And with that, catch this is a second tour. He's going on a second tour now. The first one they announced who he was.
Oh, okay.
The second tour he went out again to conclude the business of where to set the granaries, and he would have stopped in the towns. Would have taken longer, but he would have. He was going to have to select people from that town or that district to be his assistants in setting this up,
Right.
and he's going to get builders to build these granaries, and there's a lot of things he's got to get done, and he needs to know who the workers were in the area. And I think God, I said earlier to you, that God gave him discernment over the hearts of men, right? So he would know who to pick.
Right.
Logistics would be easy.
Mm-hmm.
And he already done this in a smaller scale.
Yes, he had done it
For Potiphar.
for Potiphar. He'd done
Right.
the same
He
thing.
had been prepared for this.
Right. He did the vineyards for Potiphar. He did his housing. He did set up accounts. He did all of that. And all the servants were under him, remember, in Potiphar's house?
Yep, that's
Mhm.
right.
Potiphar taught him how to
And he
do all
made
that.
it
Potiphar was,
prosperous.
yes. And Potiphar, he didn't even know how rich he was. He just knew they had bread on his table. Right? Joseph had it, right? Okay. Now, it's the second tour. He surveyed the land and selected upon the proper place for the grain, slave corn. Now he has Pharaoh's consent to go on with it.
Mhm.
The second time around, he's going to start building, right? To gather in and give directions about setting up and buying grain and see it as completed or performed for the years of plenty were now begun. Let's go, right? Okay, 47. And in the 7 plenteous years that the earth brought forth by handfuls. Now, this is the 7. God would have started this right after Joseph got established, right? So, such as the gatherers take up in their hands when reaped, in order to bind up the sheaves, right? It was more than they could gather up. That's how prosperous
Right.
this flooding was,
Right.
right? That either one stalk produced as many ears as a man could hold in his hand. Think about it, because you guys been out and seen the wheat fields around here, right? You can pull off the head of the wheat and it'll fill your palm. They couldn't hold it off of one stalk. All right, and then I'm trying to get through it. I don't think we're gonna make it.
No.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to skip the note. You guys can read that on your own. The second note there says on page 17, it says, it is record of the year, 7 years, which were in the land of Egypt and laid up the food in cities. Men bringing cording to granaries appear upon them. Monuments at, this is that place, Ben Hassan, found in the historian records, and ancient Egyptians. They found this place. It's still there. You can actually go visit it, right? Which leads so much more proof to the Bible, right? Right. So 48 says, and he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, the food in the field, which was now. the food of the field, which was round about every city, laid up he the same. So he knew that they were producing enough food to support the city. So why transport it? Keep it there.
Right.
And just keeps building grain.
It's cheaper that way.
Yeah, it's cheaper, no transportation and no loss, right?
Right.
Okay. Now Joseph purchased all that he could be stored that was extra. He didn't take away from what their daily usage was. It was the extra, right? Not all the fruits of the earth are, or all that was edible. And not all that the earth produced, but the 1/5 part of it as he had proposed. Since Joseph purchased it with Pharaoh's money, therefore he had a right to sell it again as he did during the famine. He made a deal with Pharaoh, remember?
Mm-hmm.
I'll purchase the extra, and then when the famine hits, we'll sell it back. You'll get all your money back plus. All right? All right. This is to note that he did this only in Egypt, which we're in the land of Egypt. That's why it says that. He didn't go into Canaan. He didn't go into Syria. He didn't go into Ethiopia. He just did it in Egypt, okay? Which would have been mainly along the Nile, right? The food of the field, which round about every city, right? It was easy stored, local to the town, and convenient for the people in time of famine. They didn't have to travel. The less people traveled, the less they ate.
Right.
Think about it.
You'd work
We've been
out.
quarantined, right? You actually have more food than you had. If you're not buying, you have more money, you have more.
Oh, yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? You're not spending that extra, right?
You're not eating out.
You're not
for
eating
lunch,
out,
'cause you're
right?
not out to eat lunch.
Out to eat lunch, right? It's amazing. Famines will restrict you, right? All right.
We don't drive by Dutch Brothers.
Right. Or what's the other one? Starbucks.
I don't like to make
Did you today?
Dutch Brothers is good.
No.
Okay. Now, I'm going to try to finish up this 49, and then we'll start with the next one next week, okay? 49 says, And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea very much until he left numbering it, for it was without number. Now, I like that term. It says, as the sand of the sea. Notice this phrase is used by God in the promise to the offspring of Abraham. Now, where would Joseph get that?
family stories.
Yes. He's relating it, and it's been passed on, because Moses hears it from who? You guys know, think about it. Joseph was dead by the time Moses, because they told Moses to go, when you left Egypt, to take the bones of Joseph with you.
Yeah.
Manasseh, his son, and Ephraim, his two sons, become one of the 12 tribes. One of them does. Actually, they become two, and then later on. But his sons are telling the story to Moses, recounting it, and then Moses is getting it from the history too. You see what I'm saying? All right. Joseph is the great grandson of Abraham, so why wouldn't he be? Now, how many people is under him now?
Oh, under Joseph?
Just yeah, millions.
All of Egypt.
Yeah,
Right.
kind of
Beginning
foretold.
of the
wouldn't-
grains of sand.
Yes, the grains of sand, right? Deserts. Oh, it's there. It's how you
It's
see
all
it.
parallel
Yes.
and symbolic.
And it supports it, right?
Mhm.
Right. Okay. He left numbering, right? So, as Joseph attempted to keep an account of the quantities that were brought and laid up, he would have done it because he did it for Potiphar, right?
Right.
And each city would have been required. But there's going to be a point where they run out of numbers. Okay, there was just so much,
Mhm.
and they kept building and kept putting up more. Right? That's why he wasn't worried about later on selling it, right, to outside the country. He would have made a note of how much was in each granary, right? Because he was taking an account of this and giving an account to Pharaoh. But there gets to be a point where it's too massive. I mean, it would, for one person and 8 cities and 8 the teams under each city and all that, there's no way you can keep up with it, right? Because at harvest time, everybody's harvesting at the same time, right?
You'd have to weigh it 1 bushel and then weigh it all.
I figured out the
And
mass
then
weights
you know how many
Space.
bushels you had by the weight.
by the weight or the space.
Yeah, just like you get so much money, they quit counting it and they start weighing it.
Yes, that's true. This goes by weight. You're right. It's amazing, isn't it? I think that's.
Yeah, because the next chapter is his sons.
Yes. Yeah, the next
Or
section.
the next verse. I mean.
Right. For it was without number. It's a hyperbolical expression that sands of the sea, noting the great abundance that not only the grains of corn, but even the measures of it, whatever was used. So, weight would have been what they would have gone to. That's where
Yeah,
we
'cause
get
they
most
had
of our
the-
weights from.
Yeah, they had weights back then.
Right. They weigh things.
Balances,
Mhm. Okay. That's pretty interesting. I think it's pretty fascinating to me.
You brought Shelley over here.
It's pretty cool,
I noticed
isn't
that.
it?
It's kind of like out right now.
Yeah, but history's pretty cool. It's actually a history as well as a biblical story
Right.
and truth. I like it. But I'm kind of a history kind of guy. That's why the research doesn't bother me. Pretty cool.
It doesn't bother me either
I know you just go to bed.
until I'm going to bed and then you come in and go,
Hey,
Hey, guess
you
what?
listen to
You know
this?
what? You're like, I'm asleep.
What do you think?
it's 11:30 at night. I think maybe you should tell me tomorrow.
After I have my coffee.
Right?
After the coffee.
Right.
Anyway, I've got chapter 42 is done completely. There's 14 pages.
And it's already posted,
Yeah, it's already posted, so there's
so
no
it's in our
problem.
blogs.
Yeah, and then also I've got 43 about having it. The next one after that.
You're just cooking away.
I love this part. I love Egyptian history though. So
You're not going to be here Sunday, right?
I'm not supposed to be, but I
Okay.
probably will be.
You're not going on your road trip?
I'm not. I don't.
We're on curfew.
Yeah.
Oh,
Everything shuts down.
I don't know what it's like in Nevada.
so it's supposed
Oh,
to
it's
be
bad.
pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know about where he's at. But if you got to go
Gotta
anywhere
go
near
through.
Vegas,
I got to go through Vegas to get to it.
So you're serving Sunday?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll do it. That late.
No, do it. Then he can just listen.
Yeah.
Come on. let him
You're just
see
gonna
the
talk
audience
anyway.
from-
Okay.
Okay,
I'll
cool.
I'll let you.
All right.
I won't interrupt.
Okay.
Yeah.
No reverse roles. You can opening prayer.
I can
You
do-
can put the worship service together. You can run the equipment.
I can put the worship service together if you need
No, no. I'm just playing.
I'll do the opening.
Okay.
Give me a break. Don't worry about that.
All right.
I'm going to be throwing grains of sand on the table.
Okay.
How many is that?
What does the sand say?
Yeah.
Right.
Guess how many grains of
Take me
sand
back
are
to
in this
Egypt.
fishbowl?
You know, we get a lot of our sand. We know that it comes from the Sahara Desert, from Egypt in that area. That's what causes our hurricanes. You know that, right? The winds off the Sahara Desert create the red clouds of dust over the ocean.
Okay.
That draws moisture, right? Because it's deposited.
Because it's
in-
come from
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, they know for
Pacific
a
across
fact
the
because
Pacific.
the blue hole in Florida, the big blue hole, you know, they
Yeah.
dive in, the layers, they've tested those layers of sediment, and it's from the Sahara Desert. And it's deposited by the hurricanes and things as it goes over the islands.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But without that wind and that dust from that area, it doesn't condense.
It wouldn't seed the clouds
It wouldn't seed enough, right, to
to
create those
start
storms.
rain, to start the draft,
The drafts,
to
exactly.
start the updraft,
Drafts.
to start the swirl. Yeah,
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right.
It's,
We'll
it's
pray
amazing.
out.
All right.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this Bible study, Lord. We thank you for your enlightenment. Please just be with all of us as we continue to go through this week, Lord, and in the future, Lord. We ask that you just give us all that hedge of protection against the chaos of the world, Lord, and give us understanding. And we ask that you just touch this country, Lord, and we just need an outpouring of your Holy Spirit across the whole land for healing and things of that nature. You know what I'm trying to say. And just be with us this evening as we drive home, Lord, that we all get home safe.